Incredible. We are so blessed by the talented people within our church family. To be honest, I don't know how he did it. I truly don't. How did Jesus manage to do all that he did? Yes, I realize that Jesus was both and at the same time fully human and fully divine, which on the one hand, being fully divine, allowed him to do, enabled him to do incredible things, channeling the power of God. He could do miracles and healings, as well as casting out demons. He could walk on water. He could quiet storms. He could change water into wine. He could even raise people from the dead. Yes, the fully divine Jesus could do all those things and more, which might lead people to think that Jesus was some sort of Superman and could do anything and everything that he wanted. But believe it or not, he had limitations. It's not exactly true he could do everything. For Jesus, as the only begotten Son of God the Creator, fathered by the Holy Spirit through a specially chosen human being, Mary by name, was also fully human. Human just like you and I. Created in this way intentionally so, with the purpose, with the intention that he be able to fully understand and comprehend what it was like, what it meant to be human. God, from the very beginning, intended for Jesus to experience humanity in all its fullness, in all its completeness. Thus we will find as we read the Jesus story that Jesus got hungry and needed to eat, that he became thirsty and needed to drink. Just like you and I. He could be impacted emotionally by all that went on around him. He suffered inwardly as he witnessed the conditions that many individuals lived in, as well as God's people as a whole who had to struggle so greatly. And when he was hurt, when he was wounded, he bled, just like you and I. And when crucified, died, just as we would if he had been placed on the cross. And now to the point that I am trying to make. In the same vein, by all the demands that humanity placed upon him, he must have become tired. I mean, really tired. Not just tired like you and I at the end of a hard day, but exhausted, worn out, worn to a frazzle by the demands of the crowds who pushed themselves upon him to the point that he was often surrounded and nearly suffocated by the constant press of humanity around him. They surged forth at each and every moment and opportunity, everyone hoping just for a moment of his time, the touch of his hand, a spoken blessing, a bit of healing. And after he had done this over and over and over again, from dawn till dusk, he was dog-tired, bone-weary, fatigued, spent, and drained. By the end of each day, this is how Jesus must have felt, and still the crowds came constantly, daily, all the time. It did not matter where he went. They found him. Matthew 8 tells us that on one journey he had barely gotten through the gate of the city when a centurion came, asking for his help, pleading for his help, and healing a beloved servant. Jesus could tell how much the servant meant to the man, so he took the time to heal him. Shortly thereafter, Jesus entered Peter's house. He was hoping for a bit of respite, a moment of rest, a time of refreshment, only to find that Peter's mother-in-law was sick with a terrible fever. And so he healed her. Once when he had just finished teaching in the synagogue, before he had even had a chance to take questions, get a drink of water, or sit down for a moment, he was confronted by a man possessed by an evil spirit. And once again, he took time to free him of his burden. Everywhere he went, people were there wanting more and more from him. Sort of like a mother with 3 or 4 young children. Do my mothers understand and remember what that was like? Mom, 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 mom. That's the way it was. Jesus would walk along the road from one village to another, only to be confronted one time by 2 blind men begging for their sight to be restored. And another time it was a group of 10 lepers pleading for help from that dreaded disease. There was even a time when he was in a house teaching, preaching, guiding, and directing the people with the word of the Lord. And so great were the crowds within and about the house that a small group of friends seeking help for a loved one, a paralytic. How many know the story I'm going to? They climbed up to the roof, made a hole in the thatched ceiling, lowered a person down. Fortunately, it wasn't a roof like ours. That would have been a long way to come down. They lowered their friend down so that Jesus could take time to heal him. Yes, there was no doubt that Jesus must have been tired all the time, fatigued, depleted. I don't think jet lag would apply, but it was in the list in the synonyms that I was using, so I just threw it in. And still he went on because there was so much to do. Leaving behind the people of one village where he had done as much as humanly, perhaps even divinely possible, to go on the next, where the crowds would once again be waiting for him. I was exhausted just writing it all. So why, at this point in the sermon, you might ask, do I bring this up about how tired Jesus must have been? Because it leads right into my sermon topic today, which, believe it or not, is the need for church growth. Interesting, you say, and why I, as your pastor, stand here before you and speak often about the need to grow our church. In fact, the need to grow all churches, to increase in number those who are actively involved in the faith, those who are actively involved with the work and ministry of the church, God's work. Now, while I am doing this, why I am preaching on this particular topic, perhaps again, I want to make perfectly clear has nothing to do with my wanting to build the church for my own personal or pastoral ego. It's not like I get paid per person. I'd be kind of low today, or something like that. It's not like I get a bonus, an incentive. Sure, I will have to admit, I would love to come into church one day and find 40, 50, 60 people gathered here, sitting in the pews, anxiously awaiting the start of service and the preaching of my sermon. That would be great. I would love that. Dream with me if you bit will. Wouldn't it be wonderful if on a particular Sunday, those who prepare our bulletins, the Chris's over there, began to worry about whether we would have enough bulletins to go around? Wouldn't that be great to happen? Or wouldn't it be wonderful if the people who prepare our communion trays were worried about whether there were enough cups to feed everyone who had come to church that day? And to put a bit of humor into this train of thought, wouldn't it be great if you came into the sanctuary and found that your pew that you sit in each and every week had first-time visitors in it, and you had to sit someplace else, maybe in one of the first 3 rows that hardly ever get used except for Don. And he's not there today. Wouldn't it be great if the deacons got muscle strain from carrying the plates, so heavy was the offering? Yes, I have to admit I can dream about times like that. But that's not why I'm talking about church growth. Not in the least. To explain why I do, I point you back to the first part of the sermon and all the demands that were placed on Jesus, all the needs that the people expressed, all the help that was needed by those who surrounded him. And I ask you this important question: do you think today's world is any different than it was at the time in which Jesus lived? Do you think that the world today is any different than at the time at which Jesus lived? Do you believe that the condition of humanity and the needs of the people of our world are any different than they are now? You heard the prayer request about the fact that Becky has taken someone to the hospital who was sleeping on our property there. I'm not sure how many of you saw the woman at the driveway. Somebody actually pulled into our driveway and stopped to ask her if she was okay. She was just kind of frozen there. You know about the encampment over here on the side of the property. Is our situation any different or better than it was? The need today for the help of the church, for those of the faith, is every bit as great as the time that Jesus lived. Case in point, the latest edition of, I love this paper, the Fullerton Observer. You do not realize what a fantastic local paper you have. In a recent survey, it was discovered that the number of homeless people living in our city had increased from 147 to 308 in the past 2 years alone. From 147 to 308 in the past 2 years. And wonder, what will it be like 2 years hence? People, individuals like you and I, who have no place to live. They live on the streets, in their cars, in any spare room that a friend or family member can provide, any place they can lay their head. 308 people in the city of Fullerton alone. Same paper, same edition. Fullerton Observer talking about the hunger that exists among our college students. This city has more colleges than any city I have ever seen, and the students are going hungry. They are trying to gain an education. They want to enter the workforce. They want to make a living for themselves. Maybe they will then become contributors to help out the others. But the article says that 3 colleges are opening or expanding their food pantries on college campus because so many of these students are going without food on a regular basis. So what do we do? How do we meet the needs of the homeless? How do we meet the needs of the hungry? How do we meet the needs of those who are lost and wandering and seeking a way to get through? Now, at this point, I need to point out, I firmly believe that our church, our congregation, our church family is already giving 110%. Anyone even doubt that in the least? We're already doing that. 110% of our time, our effort, our energy, our resources to deal with this problem, this situation, to help these people. I have no doubt that Orangethorpe Christian Church, as it exists today, is doing all that it can and more to follow in the footsteps of what Jesus did, to do as he did, reaching out wherever the need was to make a difference in the lives of the people around it. But here is why this sermon is about church growth. Unfortunately, there are simply not enough of us. Listen to that carefully. There are not enough of us. There are not enough of us here at OCC. There are not enough of us at the Methodist Church across the street. There is not enough of us at First Christian in downtown or any of the other 48 churches in Fullerton that I've talked about in the past. There are simply not enough of us to do the work that needs to be done. That's why we need to recruit more people to the faith, to our churches. Now, I understand, I will admit, this is not a new need. It has always been that way. Jesus, from the very beginning, recognized the need of workers, that he could not do it on his own. In Matthew 9:35-38, he says, "And Jesus went throughout all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every disease and every affliction. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Jesus knew what the situation was, but he did more than just look at the problem. He did more than just talk about the problem. He knew that he needed extra help. So he went out and recruited 12 disciples to follow him, learn from him, be discipled from him. He knew that no one man, even someone both fully human and fully divine, could do all that he would ask of them. So he called them out, gave them authority over unclean spirits, let them cast out demons, heal disease and in every infirmity. He needed them to work on his behalf to continue to expand the mission and ministry. But 12 wasn't enough. Further along in Luke 10, we find that he calls either the 70 or 72, depending which version. He sent them out 2 by 2, 70 individuals, to get the villages prepared so that when he came, that they were ready to take the teachings of Jesus to heart. And still that was not enough. The famous scripture, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field," is what he did. Time and time again, he looked for more workers. There is so much to be done. And at our current state, we simply cannot do it. And so we need to expand. And we do that by reaching out and touching someone appropriately. Yes, reach out and touch someone. You've heard me talk about the similarities between my Lions clubs and the churches. You never know if a person will come to church unless you ask. We have found with our service clubs, we have found with churches, that there are people sitting there who have never been asked, or have not been asked in a long time. They have not had a chance to sit down with you over a cup of coffee or an iced tea or a cold beer or whatever it is and have you tell them about your church. Tell them about what this incredible small ministry does to make an impact on the city of Fullerton. Tell them about your inspiring preacher who just, captivates you the entire time. Talk about the love of our people. Talk about what we have done in the past and what we want to do in the future. Have we sat down and found someone to say, you really need to come and see for yourself? And then once here, we let Jesus do his work. Our church will not grow unless we ask. There is a downside to having a pastor who lives all the way in the far world of Rancho Cucamonga. I was at a meeting recently in Newport Beach for the Lions Club, and I'd tell people where I would come, and they'd go, "You're where?" And I go, "Well, you know where the 210 and the 15 come together?" And they go, "Oh," as if it was like in another land, as if you needed a passport, change your money going across, apply for your visa. Yes, there is a downside, and we're working on that. I'm getting ready to join the Fullerton Interfaith Coalition so that I get a chance to learn what else is going on here in this city and to find out how I can reach out. But we need you to do it. To share about Monday night ministry, to share about how we care for people, to share about the love that we have. Only then will we begin to grow. Only then will we be able to meet the needs. Until then, we do the best we can and then have to turn people away. The woman at the street, the man that Becky's taken to the hospital. There was a woman we talked to coming in, just newly homeless, frightened about what that means and needing help. So much, plus our own needs, because we each have our needs besides that. Let's find a way to grow. What we do is already great, but we want and need to do more. And it needs you to reach out and touch someone with the love of Christ. Shall we bow for a moment of prayer? Dear Lord, help us to find ways to overcome our hesitations, our concern, our embarrassment, whatever it is, to be able to open up and speak about the church, our faith, our ministry, and to invite people to come and be a part. Lord, help us. Put us in situations where we find the people who are in need, who perhaps knowing that they have been welcomed personally, will come to find a home in our church or one of your others. This we ask in your Son's name. Amen.